I am Olga Polishchuk. I'm the Vice President of Investigations at ZeroFox. And thank you so much, TechNado, for having me today. When I was thinking about our conversation, I couldn't help but think back to when I started in this field and how things have changed rapidly. When I first started, Facebook was just becoming more mainstream. And then we've lived through social media boom and smartphones and cloud computing. We've seen ransomware evolve and cryptocurrencies appear and, gone through deep fakes and now AI. And every one of those technologies definitely changed the threat landscape in some way. But after having spent most of my career investigating people who misuse technology, I can't help but think that, technology is only half of a story. And the other half is people. And that's the perspective I'm coming from today. I think we focus too much on AI and then we forget what's really driving people's reactions. Most people are not afraid of technology itself. What people are worried about is what it means to them, and they are concerned about uncertainty. Will my job change? I've been working on my skills for the past 10 years. Are they still relevant? How do I fit in this new workplace? Those are very human questions. And from an investigative perspective, I tend to think about the risks in kind of a different buckets. Of course, we have insider risk. That's when people feel displaced, they feel unfairly treated. And so the chances of data theft and information leakage and the chances of access abuse definitely increase. The second is targeted harassment. Executives, AI leaders, companies who are associated with rapid AI mandate and evolution have become already victims and focus of abusive messages and doxing and kind of the hate speech online. We've seen impersonations. We've seen, all sorts of coordinated online campaigns against these individuals. And there's also opportunistic kind of a social engineering side to it. There's layoffs and restructuring have always brought about this uncertainty and people naturally looking for information, which creates an opportunity for fraudsters to create fake HR messages, fraudulent job offers, all sorts of impersonation attempts that feel very believable because now they have AI and they also fit in that context of what is happening in the world. And of course, there's reputational risk. One employee's experience, whether it's accurate or not, it can spread quickly, especially on social media, and it can resonate with a much broader narrative. All these risks are connected. When people feel like they're losing control over something important, they naturally start looking for somebody to hold responsible, accountable for. And that's why these kind of AI related work changes are not just HR issue or technology issue. We are really dealing with a human issue. In my mind, I don't think this is a communication challenge. It is an agency challenge. People deal with change a lot better when they feel like they're part of it and they're participating in it, instead of have it simply happen to them. And I know it sounds like cliche, but I've actually seen it inside our own organization. Instead of our leaders, our executives mandating AI, they've asked the question of how do we involve our people in this transition? And we don't just tell people to use AI. We actually create opportunities and quote unquote safe environments for people to experiment, to play around, to see what's working, what's not working, to kind of demystify the idea of AI and bring it closer home, help us. And we have provided open forums for it, open discussions where people can actually express how they feel and what's working, what's not working. So that creates a completely different feeling. People aren't just using AI, they're helping shape how it gets used. And as a wonderful side effect, they create a much better customer experience for our clients, who then reap the effects of this kind of open space for experimentation. So once people feel like they have a sense of ownership, AI becomes a lot less intimidating. Yes, definitely. And one pattern I've noticed is people tend to fall into two extremes. They either trust the AI too much or they dismiss it too quickly. On one side, people assume that everything they see that's polished and beautiful and confident must be accurate. And it takes them a little bit longer to kind of understand the idea of misinformation and fabricated images, deep fakes, kind of that impersonation, the whole AI generated content ecosystem, and understand what's completely legitimate and what's not. And then the other people, you have some skeptics and people who just assume everything is AI and they assume everything must be generated, which is also misleading. And it does create this confusion, especially confusion about what's real and what's not. So this kind of limited awareness does influence our day-to-day decision making, because people might not realize how easily AI can imitate somebody, either their image or their writing style, or even how AI can create convincing fake job opportunities. So I don't really think that the biggest challenge is that AI does exist. I think it's just a lot of people don't yet have a reliable way to judge when AI may be involved, how much confidence to have in place, what, when do they believe their eyes, when they shouldn't believe their eyes, when they should stop and verify something from another source, for instance. So I think that's the awareness gap that I see. I think the first instinct is often to ask, is this a threat? But what is more helpful is to ask a question, what is changing? Because most situations don't go from negative rhetoric or criticism or disagreements to a security incident overnight. There's usually a progression. Somebody becomes more emotionally invested. The language is changing. The focus is narrowing. Maybe they're contacting an individual. Maybe they're sending an email or two. Maybe they're encouraging others to do the same. Those changes matter because they show you how the situation is evolving. I also don't think that security teams should be the only ones dealing with this, because HR understands one part of the picture. Communication understands another. Leaders have their own perspective. Legal has their own perspective. When those teams are sharing information early, organizations do have a lot more options than they would if they were to react after something has already escalated. So for me, it's really all about recognizing changes in the behavior early, and early enough to be able to respond proportionately instead of reactively. Honestly, I have a lot more sympathy for leaders now than when I did, 20 years ago or so. And I think a lot more leaders are figuring this out as they go, because we really don't have a playbook for it right now. But I do also think that the conversation has shifted, and I'm seeing that shift already. At first, it was all about, how do we implement AI? And now I am seeing this kind of shift to how do we bring people with us? And the organizations that are handling this best are the ones that are not necessarily talking about AI all the time or sending like really pretty PR messages out in the in the wild. But I also think those are the leaders that also recognize they don't have an answer to every question, but they are willing to have these transparent and honest conversations with their people, especially as these answers might still be evolving. And to me, that's a much more realistic way to lead through this very rapid change. Honestly, I have a lot more sympathy for leaders now than when I did, This is a question that I definitely thought about a lot, because I don't think people are reacting to AI because they dislike technology. They definitely are reacting to what those individuals and those people represent. One pattern that we're seeing is that, especially when people feel like they're losing control, especially when they're losing control over something important, like their career, their financial stability, their future, or how this future might look like, they naturally start to look for somebody to blame, somebody to hold responsible, and somebody who has that control that they're lacking. So today, AI researchers, business leaders, tech firms, they have become the visible face of AI transformation. And we all know that the reality is that it's not just one or two people responsible for this massive change in the world. But our minds don't think this way. People need characters. And, we simplify big complicated issues by putting a human face on them. And social media makes it very easy. They give us somebody to blame. They give us somebody to argue with. There is somebody to hold responsible. And from my perspective as an investigator, that's where the distinction becomes important, because criticism is healthy. People should question new technology and they should question decisions around them. But what catches my attention is that when that opinion sharing and when that dissent becomes personal and when they start focusing on a specific person. So that's the pattern that I've learned to recognize over the years. And I do believe that fixation is a much stronger indicator than indicator of potential risk than anger alone. If there's one thing that my career has taught me is that every new technology changes the landscape, but it also reminds us that people are still people. Tools evolve and expand, but the motivations behind human behavior don't change nearly as quickly. And I think that is encouraging, because if we continue to understand people, to understand human motivations, we'll be much better prepared for whatever technology comes next. So thank you again, Teknadu. I really enjoyed the conversation.